Hey, this is Corey. I'm back talking about chatbots. And I just had this really cool experience and I wanted to share it because I was trying to figure out how to make this bot better with LangChain and it didn't seem to be built in, um, but I was able to make it work. So cool. So if you remember last time, I built this bot that is able to answer questions about my documentation for my product SaaS Pegasus, and it was all right. Like, I mean, it was kind of great if you gave it things that were obviously in it, but it didn't do very well on a lot of questions, and it failed pretty hard when I put it installed it in our Slack community and people started playing with it, and it generated a bunch of crap. So this is an example. These are the prompts that it gave to a few things, and you can see like what version of Django is used, like version 0.14.4 of Django is used, which if you know Django, I don't even think that's a Django version. It's probably getting that from somewhere else. How do teams work? It does pretty decent with this. What are URLs? It gives this kind of random thing, test, I don't know. Is Rust a good programming language? Doesn't even know what Rust is. So I wanted to make this better, and the core problem is that the default LangChain sort of Q&A bot is built off of GPT-3, which is good, but not nearly as good as ChatGPT or GPT-4. So I was able to make it work, and we can now like compare these answers side by side. So what version of Django used? It now knows the different versions of Django. It's pulling these from the release notes, so it's not the best answer. I could try asking it again and see what it does. I have gotten better answers out of that. How do teams work? Also sort of pretty good. What are URLs? Definitely gives a much more context-specific answer here, and includes some sort of Pegasus-specific stuff about how you use relative and absolute URLs and things like that. So this gave a much more specific answer now about sort of which versions of Django are supported in which versions of Pegasus. And then finally, I guess we can ask it about Rust. And let's see what it did there. Okay, well, did all right. Anyway, so this one on the left is built with the default LangChain Q&A stuff, and the one on the left is built with that. The one on the right is built with ChatGPT. I'm actually using ChatGPT3. I wonder if it would even give better answers with GPT4. And so I just wanted to quickly show how this works because it was hard for me to find anybody who was actually doing this. And basically what I had to do is, so previously it was making this index.query with sources function call, which goes into, I don't know, LangChain internals, and it does all these retrieval QA with sources chain, blah, blah, blah. LangChain is complicated. I still don't really understand how chains work, and I haven't wrapped my head around that interface. But it was complicated. At the end of the day, it only works with a sort of like a standard LLM. But what it does is it creates these, let's see if I still have one open. Like it creates these long prompts where it says, gives it some instructions. It gives it some examples. So in the old version of the chatbot, I could sometimes get it to talk about Michael Jackson just because this Michael Jackson thing here was provided as part of the prompt. And then down at the bottom, and I had to just kind of like go edit the LangChain code to figure this out. It's probably an easier way. But so at the bottom, it then sort of puts your custom content in here, and then finally gives this like final answer colon. And the reason it's doing this, it's using the chat completion API instead of the chat bot API, where you kind of have like more of a Q&A flow. So I basically reproduced this, but with the chat GPT models. And I'm sure there's a better way to do this in LangChain, but like I said, it would have taken me longer to wrap my head around how LangChain works than just building this thing myself. So one nice thing we can do with ChatGPT is we can provide a system prompt. I was playing with including sources and not including sources, but I left out sources for now. But so ChatGPT, unlike the other models and GPT-4, will take the system prompt. And so I can say now, your knowledge bot, I'm going to give you, different parts of knowledge, answer the question based on the knowledge. And if there's nothing, try to use your general knowledge. So I was actually hoping it would answer that Rust question correctly. Let's try one more time, just for kicks. Because it is supposed to use its general knowledge. I wonder if I'm running an old version of the bot. One sec. I had to go back and load up an old version. No, I think I am on. Okay, never mind. Well, apart from that little detour, so here's the system prompts, and then each of these prompts will go into the user prompt. So imagine typing all this stuff into ChatGPT. So you type in begin documents, it dumps all the documents. For each document, if you're using a source, it kind of splits it up. If you're not using sources, it just kind of adds these begin end tags. I haven't played with this too much. I don't know how much of this is useful or required, but it works pretty well. And then you stick in the question. And so this is just kind of boilerplate Python code for formatting and creating, essentially given the documents and the question, just shoving it into these templates. And then the other thing I did, I was finding that it was, there are a couple documents in my database that have like 1 or 2 words in them, and it tries to answer based on that, and sometimes it kind of chokes. So I just added this little filter function, which when it first pulls out the documents, which it does here with this vector store, it just filters out anything that's less than like 20 characters long. That's not going to be useful. So this is the code. So first we get our vector store index, which is kind of in all the LangChain documentation. So that's nothing novel. We're going to use the chat OpenAI LLM instead of the OpenAI LLM, and that gives us sort of the chat access. Then we just manually turn this vector store into a document retriever. And from the retriever, we get the relevant document. So again, I just kind of source dove into what this function was doing and chased out that it was doing that. We run that little filter here to pull out the tiny documents and remove them. Then we build the prompt with just basic string formatting. And then we just create our system prompt template. We can use memory. So I haven't wired this up to the UI yet, but in theory, it should be possible to keep the chat history, which will presumably let you ask follow-up context-specific questions. We'll see how well that works with all this other junk stuck in here. And then this is just kind of, I forget where I got this, but this is just like how you initialize a chat prompt template. And then you create a conversation chain and you ask it to predict based on the input that you created, which was this big ass prompt. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could compress this down. I just wrote this, but it's something, 75 to 97. So 22 lines of code to convert a GPT-3 based LangChain retriever into a ChatGPT based one with a bunch of hard-coded stuff. So I'm stoked about this. It's much better than the previous version of the bot that I had installed, and I'm excited to keep playing with this and see where things go next. So that's all I wanted to show, and I will see you next time. This has been more experiments with LangChain and Python and Django and bots and all that good stuff.